Hello there, everyone. This is Dr. Precillano Echavia of the College of Business and Accountancy, Holy Name University, Tagbilaran City, Bohol. I will be presenting our study on the corporate social responsibility practices of selected higher educational institutions in Bohol, Philippines. Changing times made influences on business organizations. Corporate social responsibility is construed as a critical strategic instrument that redefine the way businesses operate in a globalized setting. It also became a prominent issue for higher education in promoting the development of civic values and responsibility, as per Colby et al. In 2010. As the higher education market changes, colleges and universities need to build stronger strategic relationship with their stakeholders in order to stay competitive. In the Philippines, the Commission on Higher Education requires that HEIs must perform the trifocal function of instruction, research, and community extension where CSR takes place. Most studies involving CSR focused on non-academic institutions. HEIs as business operations also have to fulfill CSR as a valuable and necessary strategy in the competitive academic environment of today. This study is conducted to determine how employees of an academic community understand CSR and make assessments on its implementation. This research study will also fill the gap by looking into the level of awareness and the extent of manifestations as to how the selected HEIs address and implement their CSR practices based on the knowledge, perception, and attitude of employees. For our literature review, this study is anchored on two interrelated theories on business ethics, the CSR theory and stakeholder theory. Many researchers believe that some ideas of stakeholder theory can be helpful to CSR theory and vice versa. CSR theory has its roots in stakeholder theory, as per study of Carroll in 1991 and mentioned in Lee 2012. Fitzpatrick 2013 cited that the number of corporate social responsibility practices related to shareholder proposals has significantly increased in recent years, along with the number of monetary volumes of socially responsible investment funds. Freeman 2017 mentioned that whenever business ethics is given emphasis, either in terms of scholarships or the discipline taught in business schools, or the organizational norms applied in many companies, both CSR and stakeholder theory come as two major concepts. Some saw these concepts as somewhat conflicting and competing views on the field, while others still built their arguments on the complementarity of corporate social responsibility and stakeholder theory, as mentioned by Rosso and Pirini in 2012. In a study conducted by Medallion in 2014 on CSR programs of 4 private universities in the Philippines, he cited that community extension was integrated in the curriculum to hone and develop among their students the spirit of volunteerism and responsibility. Under the highlights of globalization, HEIs had to consider the competition in order to attract high-quality students and academic staff, not only within national borders, but on international level, as mentioned by Miliwar and Akel in 2005. Zheng in 2011, as mentioned in Muya 2014, studied corporate social responsibility in 4 dimensions: economic, legal, ethical, and philanthropic responsibilities, and found out that CSR has significant effect on employee work and behavior. So we have here the relationship between CSR and stakeholder theory. As we notice, stakeholder theory focuses on the stakeholders, while corporate social responsibility theory focuses on society at large. Our problem statement: the study assessed the extent to which CSR practices of selected higher educational institutions in Bohol are manifested in terms of knowledge, perception, and attitude of employees. Specifically, it answered the following questions. What is the extent to which CSR practices are manifested among the selected HEIs in terms of the employees' knowledge, perception, and attitudes? What is the extent to which CSR practices are manifested among the selected HEIs in terms of addressing the following economic, legal, ethical, and philanthropic responsibilities as assessed by the respondents? Is there any significant difference in the assessment of the respondents when grouped according to employment category and school affiliation? And based on the findings of the study, what proposal may be designed to improve the implementation of CSR practices and programs of the selected HEIs? The study is guided by this null hypothesis. There is no significant difference in the assessment of the respondents when grouped according to employment category and school affiliation. For our methodology, the research design utilized a descriptive research method and employed an information and data gathering scheme to come up with sufficient discussion on the expected output. Our research respondents were taken from one classification of stakeholders, the employees of the selected HEIs, grouped as to their employment categories. Primary data were collected using a researcher-made questionnaire supplemented with unstructured interviews. A pre-test or dry run has been administered to determine the validity of the questions given. Data collected were interpreted using Cronbach alpha to assess internal consistency of the items. Data were gathered and analyzed using frequencies, weighted mean, standard deviation, analysis of variance or ANOVA, and two-tailed t-test applying the statistical tool SPSS. And for the data interpretation, a 4-point Likert type scale has been used with the following hypothetical mean, range, and description: 3.26 to 4, 2.51 to 3.25, 1.76 to 2.50, 1.0 to 1.75, interpreted as very great extent, less extent, and no manifestation in that order. Now we have the results and discussion. For employees' knowledge on CSR practices, an overall weighted mean of 3.17 was obtained, interpreted as great extent, an indication that the practices were manifested in most cases. The following indicators obtained the highest weighted mean: arts and cultural activities with 3.39, funding of employees' training and development 3.35, provision of healthcare benefits to employees 3.27, funding charitable contributions and donations 3.27. These are the indicators with lowest obtained weighted mean: funding of environmental projects 2.87, financial assistance to employees 3.04, interpreted as great extent, while those with highest weighted mean were interpreted as very great extent. Employees' perception and impact of CSR practices obtain a weighted mean of 3.28, interpreted to a very great extent, an indication that CSR practices are manifested in all cases. Areas that obtain remarkable weighted mean are: it enhanced school image and reputation, 3.64, it enhanced community trust and confidence, 3.50, It develops sense of responsibility and accountability, 3.47, all interpreted as very great extent. There are areas that obtain a low weighted mean. These are provides favorable media coverage, 2.78, and helps increase revenue, 3.04, interpreted as great extent. Employees' attitudes towards CSR practices. It has a weighted mean of 3.45, rated as very great extent, an indication of a favorable attitude by employees towards CSR practices. These are the areas that showed impressive weighted mean ratings. Addressing the organization's pressing needs, 3.51, fair treatment of employees, 3.47, adherence to good governance, 3.46, transfer of CSR knowledge through volunteerism, 3.46, all interpreted to be very great extent. In this aspect, all indicators were manifested to a very great extent. For the delivery of economic, legal, ethical, and social responsibilities, we have here the results. For economic responsibilities, it obtained a weighted mean of 3.39, legal responsibilities, 3.47, ethical responsibilities, 3.43, and philanthropic responsibilities, 3.36, all interpreted as very great extent. So there was an observed consistency as to the extent level of manifestation of these CSR dimensions. Now, to resolve our null hypothesis, we have the assessment on CSR practices when grouped according to employment category. So we have the two classes of respondents, the administration and department heads, and the rank and file and faculty. So it can be observed that there are indicators which the admin and department heads have different manifestations or perceptions. So there are areas where the null hypothesis has been accepted, and there are also areas where the null hypothesis are rejected. So for the null hypothesis to be accepted, it should be more than the accepted level of significance, which is 0.05, while if it is equal or below the significant level of 0.05, it is rejected. Now, what is interesting to note is the rank and file assessment, wherein all of the indicators showed a rejection of the null hypothesis, which means that there is an observed difference as to their manifestation of the different indicators relating to CSR practices. For the assessment on CSR practices when grouped as to school affiliation with the use of ANOVA, so we have presented here the results from School A, School B, and School C. So it can also be noted that in the three schools, the indicators were manifested at different perceptions or manifestation. There are indicators where the null hypotheses are rejected, and there are also indicators where we can find the null hypotheses are accepted. So for the proposed CSR enhancement program, since the funding of environmental and community projects received the lowest weighted mean of 2.44 by the rank and file of School A and 2.76 from School C, the researchers proposed for an integrated solid waste management program to be implemented among the selected higher educational institutions in Bohol, Philippines. Conclusions: there is a need for higher educational institutions to recognize that their CSR practices and programs must reflect with the values and norms which they claim to be known for. This can be achieved when their commitment to CSR is heightened in both operational and academic level, expected to benefit not only the selected HEIs, but the entire community as well. As highlighted in this study, selected HEIs through their CSR programs can enhance their image and reputation, boast the trust and support of the public, and develop a sense of responsibility and accountability, which are vital for long-term sustainability amidst the challenges and increased competition in the industry. For our recommendations, the management and administration of the chosen HEIs should implement the proposed integrated solid waste management program, must be committed towards environmental quality and sound ecological operations, and for other researchers to conduct a corollary study focusing the impact of CSR practices to the external stakeholders, and for this study to be replicated in other higher educational institutions. So thank you for this great opportunity, Asian Scholars Network, and to the members of the organizing committee. This is Dr. Precillano E. Echavia with my co-authors, Dr. Teresa H. Inot and Professor Ace P. Oy, saying thank you so much.